It's a question that's been on many people's minds. Is Asheville safe?
I've been followed to my car. I've had knives pulled on me. I've had things thrown at me because they could not be stolen from the store.
Downtown workers reporting a spike in break-ins and thefts.
I'm afraid to go to work. I never felt that way before.
Asheville's crime rate even making national headlines.
You can come to Asheville and you can do anything, and nothing's going to happen to you.
Tonight, we discuss possible solutions in a WLOS roundtable. Hello and welcome to our News 13 roundtable, where we will discuss the question, is Asheville safe?
And that's been a question on many people's minds after a recent rise in crime. In the first month of 2023, Asheville police reported a 200% monthly increase in break-ins.
As for violent crime, one of the most recent numbers comes from September. That's when the police chief reported a 44% year-over-year increase in aggravated assaults. Those trends come as Asheville Police Department continues to deal with ongoing staffing shortages.
We will introduce our participants in just a moment, but first, we want to tell you about some of the factors that have led us to this point.
Many issues related to crime got worse during the pandemic. Asheville police saw many officers leave toward the middle and end of 2020. That's the same time national protests against police brutality were happening in the wake of George Floyd's death. Police say we need to be doing everything we can to bring in new officers.
We need to be the highest paid, the best benefit package providing, most attractive agency in the region.
As those protests were happening, fentanyl use was skyrocketing.
2/3, 3/4 of everybody who's dying of an overdose has fentanyl in their system.
Nearly 180 people died from overdoses in Buncombe County between January of 2020 and August of 2021. Adding to those issues, Asheville's affordable housing problem getting even worse.
The market alone is basically just building really expensive housing. Because there's enough people who can buy that.
A recent report says Asheville has the highest cost of living in the state. That lack of affordable housing increasing mental health issues for homeless people.
Certainly, if you don't have a safe place to live, then you can't tend to those other areas of your life.
All of these problems contributing to factors that can cause an increase in crime.
Coming up in an in-depth one-on-one with Asheville Police Chief David Zack, we will dive deeper into these issues. With us here tonight, we have Micheal Woods, Executive Director of Western Carolina Rescue Ministries, Kit Cramer, President and CEO of the Asheville Chamber of Commerce, Honor Moor with the Asheville Coalition for Public Safety, and Rondell Lance, President of Asheville's Fraternal Order of Police. We also invited Mayor Esther Manheimer and City Manager Deborah Campbell to attend this roundtable, but they declined.
And now our first topic is about homelessness and its relationship with crime in this city.
News 13 has reported extensively on Asheville's affordable housing crisis. How is this issue impacting homelessness, and is it driving some people to commit crimes? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that. You know, our lack of affordable housing, and not just affordable housing the way that is defined by the city or the county, but deeply affordable housing in our area is going to continue to cause an increase within the homeless population. But it's not just housing that we're looking for. It needs to be safe housing. And right now, the largest amount of deeply affordable housing for the population that I get to serve is through the Asheville Housing Authority. But it's the most unsafe housing that we have. So the problem that we're seeing is that if with our clientele and with our guests, they're choosing to not go to unsafe housing, either stay in shelter or stay on the street, and then it becomes a matter of survival. And so we're gonna have to fix it from that side before we can make a dent on this side.
And why do you say it's unsafe?
Well, it just is. If you look at the high crime areas there, some of it has to do with the way that housing has been run. There are people that are there that we interact with every single day, and they tell us the horror stories of what's going on around them, how crime is just allowed to happen. And everyone deserves safe housing, regardless of where you fall on the economic ladder. You deserve safe housing. We all want that. And there has to be a concerted effort in order to make that type of housing safe so that people will have a chance to succeed.
I guess I want to make sure, I've seen a lot of conflation between homelessness and crime, and I think very unfairly in some cases. If we're talking about vagrancy, if we're talking about bad nuisance behavior, if we're talking about criminal behavior, that's one thing. I don't think it's necessarily connected to homelessness. Sure. There are people who become homeless for many, many reasons. And I don't want to see that criminalized. It's, in many cases, great people trying their best, and things get out of control.
But is there a connection in Asheville when it comes to homelessness and crime? Like
there's
when you
a
go
connection
downtown,
between vagrancy and people who will approach and take advantage of the homeless that exist, and then the environment around it. They take advantage. And we definitely have plenty of issues around that need to be addressed, and addressed aggressively.
Let's talk about the issue of the unsafe housing again. Anybody have any thoughts on how to make it safer?
I mean, we need more housing, period. We know that. Everybody knows we need more housing, and in terms of how to make it safer, I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in that particular area.
I think the thing that I would say is that, we have great law enforcement in this area, and they need our support. But there's only so much they can do if the behavior keeps getting dismissed at the judicial level. And so we got to make sure that we create an environment to where certain behaviors are no longer going to be tolerated in those areas, and there has to be consequences there. But law enforcement can only do what they can do. But then when it gets to whether it's the district attorney or the judges, they have to follow through, and there has to be that has to be there. Accountability.
When I worked downtown as a sergeant on the bike team for many years, and we talk about homelessness, the people that were homeless because of financial issues or maybe their house burnt, we had no issues or problem with that. What we forget, so many of the people downtown are addicts, addicted to alcohol and to drugs. That's where we had issues. And you've got so many, and it's shameful sometimes, with mental disabilities that are on the streets. They don't want to go in the shelter. They don't want to follow rules, and so we dealt with them. But in Asheville, it seems we had nowhere to send them, nowhere for them to get help. Those that were addicts, we would arrest them, and then they would, because as addicts, they wouldn't do anything. But like he was saying, it's on the DA and the judges. When they come before them, they can dictate, you're going to be in this program. We're going to place you in this program, part of your being found guilty for whatever. So when that's not being done, there's no accountability. They're being right back out. The DA's office, the judges have failed, and social workers, everybody talk about social workers need to do more. They need to be in court and say, all right, this gentleman's been here 4 times in the last 5 months. Let's get with him. Let's help him. They try to put it all on the police officers, but where I think our biggest gap is when these people are in court. The DA's office is dropping the ball, the judges are dropping the ball, and they have a place there that they can look at these people and go, hey, let us help you. As an officer, all I can do is 1 of 2 things. I can help you and advise you somewhere, but that's the perfect place. And that's, I think, is where crime keeps, we keep going back, nothing's being done to us.
If I could
lack of accountability there.
And if I could jump in, that's a good segue. The reason why the Asheville Coalition for Public Safety started was just because regular citizens were finally tired of all the petty theft that was going on, not only downtown, but on Tunnel Road, in West Asheville, on Charlotte Street, on Merriman Avenue, in places that it wasn't happening like a year to a year and a half ago. And so I became friends with another leader online who manages another Facebook group, and we started community groups as a watch group to say, hey, what's going on in your neighborhood? I started talking directly to businesses. One says, oh, I had thousands of dollars ripped off on Charlotte Street, and we have cameras and we have alarms. Again, places that really never had problems. So we got together a year ago. We had a meeting at the Green Sage on Merriman Avenue. We're a group of people who vote every which way on both sides of the aisle. And we began to actually unify on working on supporting the Asheville Police Department. This city has had a prolonged period where it is unpopular to support the police department. And so we felt like we need to stand up and be vocal and be out there, and we started showing up at council meetings, public safety meetings, and making our rounds. And we're meeting with a lot of good leaders like the folks I'm sitting with here to really get a better understanding, broader understanding, what's going on out there. But we're asking the public, we're asking the leaders, please stand up and support the Asheville Police Department. They need that support so that people will want to come here and work here and police in this city. And of course, we're asking for salary raises because it's extremely expensive to live here in Western North Carolina on a policeman's salary. It's important to point that out.
And I want to make sure, because we're going to talk more about police officers and salary and pay and all of that, but I want to go back to the mental health and substance use issues. Is that playing a part in crime downtown?
Without a doubt.
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, you know, here's real world stats. For one in three people who are experiencing homelessness in Buncombe County, one in three of them will have a mental health crisis. All right, and half of that 1 in 3 will have a substance use issue, and so that's playing a large role in it. But also there's a permissive attitude that we have allowed to flow in Buncombe County, that there are just certain things that certain laws that we should enforce that would help people get into help. So, for instance, panhandling is illegal in North Carolina. It's also illegal. It's also was a separate ordinance made just for Buncombe County. But now some people say, well, why would you criminalize that behavior? Because there are organized criminal organizations, and you will agree with me. There are organized criminal organizations that are preying on those people, and with their mental health condition and their substance use issue, and there are organized crime organizations that literally are trafficking people to stand at corners, to ask for money. They're trafficking them. Human trafficking is taking place there. Right here in Asheville. Right here. And so it looks like just to the common person, that's somebody standing there with a sign who's asking for help. But if you watch them long enough and you survey the area, there's teams of people. I've even seen it where a van will come pick up people, literally pick them up and take them away. And so we have to, even though it seems like a minor thing, but as law enforcement officers, why should I even deal with that if I know that it's going to get dismissed and nothing's going to happen? But if we say that's no longer tolerated, then we can help those folk who maybe didn't know that there was alternatives, or that there was substance use programs, or even mental health treatment, that they can get into that. Because right now they're just being taken advantage of.
I think there's opportunity to address this too, because there's relief funding for example, for opioid addictions. There's also, I'm really happy that there is hope on the horizon about a behavioral health hospital that's going to open. HCA is opening one in the third quarter of this year. So that will provide a place for police officers to take people who are having a mental health crisis. The other thing, in talking with some of the people who do the work on the street with people who are experiencing homelessness, they will say that the drugs are being cut with substances that are causing violent behavior. So unlike in the past, they're seeing more violent behavior because of the substances that are mixed with the drugs. So it's a huge issue, and here it's not just opioids, it's meth. And meth being cut with fentanyl, which is deadly, but also very, very addictive. So there are so many layers to these issues, so complicated, and yet there's hope in that the city is working on a shelter type of environment that would be better for people than being on a street or in a tent. There are nonprofits that are working on long-term solutions. Those things are great, but we need help now in terms of the behaviors that are on the street right now and the people who are preying on those people on the street.
And when it comes to those people on the streets, the first person they really interact with when someone calls about them is a police officer. So our next topic is about police staffing and the impact it's having on crime in Asheville.
You know, it's an issue that News 13 has been reporting on for months now. So here's what we've been hearing from downtown workers and police. It's a growing concern for many. Is Asheville safe?
On average, the guard on duty would kick out 5 to 7 people per day during the month of May, all of whom were homeless.
Business owners reporting a spike in crime in downtown Asheville.
That compounded with mental health issues and drug issues, you know, it's really creating a traumatic issue in town.
Complaints climbing about everything from break-ins to assaults.
Possible business B&E in progress.
That's as the Asheville Police Department deals with a major staffing crisis.
And it's a difficult hurdle to overcome to get people to do a job for which they won't be appreciated.
No justice, no peace, no racist police.
That anti-police sentiment gaining traction following the George Floyd racial justice protests. Now city leaders and community members trying to figure out the best path forward.
We're not against it. We'll try anything to bring the right candidate to the city.
And that brings us to our first question for this topic. How can we attract more qualified police officers to the city?
Well,
I have addressed this several times in news articles. And I talk to police officers all across North Carolina as FOP president, travel the state. And anytime you mention come to Asheville to work, they laugh at you. They say, we would not come to Asheville and work. And it's not, they deserve money, but it's not the money. It's the environment, anti-police environment that's in the city of Asheville, by city council, by county commissioners, and what's allowed to go on here. They laugh at you if you even mention coming to Asheville. I know someone that was just last week at a BLET graduation at a local college, not in Buncombe County. He said, won't you come work in Buncombe? We need people. They laughed and said, we're not coming to Buncombe.
And specifically, what's anti-police that they are doing?
You've got city council where someone votes against getting ballistic vests for officers. You've got this same thing that you hear across the nation. It's reimagine police. That means tear it down. Let's make them do less and less enforcement. You've got the county that voted against the people at the detention center to get a raise. They could have went, I think, 3, 5, and 8, and they ended up voting on 5. Some of them wanted to vote on 3. And they see, and this DA scares law enforcement officers. State agencies have went to their supervisor and said, please get me out of Buncombe County. We don't trust this DA. And that's the biggest thing. They don't trust the district attorney and the way he would enforce that he will come after officers. I believe 100%, if you're a bad officer, you need to be charged, you need to go to jail. We don't like any dirty cops. But when you've got a DA that tries his best, they just don't trust the DA or the DA's office. And they don't trust the elected officials that are in place in Buncombe County. That's what's keeping people away from Buncombe County officers. And I've talked to them not only here in South Carolina and other places. They say, there ain't no way. When they was looking for a chief, executive with the Chief Police Association, told me, he said, every chief, they all said, we're not coming to Asheville. Even who he said was the most liberal chief they have, and I won't name what city that they said she worked. She laughed and said, there ain't no way I'd go to Asheville and work because of the environment here caused by elected officials in Buncombe County. It's not a good environment for law enforcement. What are you going to use to convince somebody to come here? Hey, we got people in city council that don't think you need ballistic vests.
You know what? We've got to stop. We've got to stop listening to the single voice, the small voice, and instead think about the larger voices of people who are more who are in the middle politically. Because in terms of talking with the business folks that we brought together to speak to city council were intent. They want and appreciate public safety. And we said to them that our top priority is similar to yours, is compensation, that they've got to become employers of choice as it relates to this very competitive environment for these people who get picked off right and left, not just in the region, but even beyond. Yeah. We've got to be way more competitive in terms of salaries, benefits, and also working conditions.
Well, some of them are taking pay cuts, and I've talked to sheriffs and chiefs across Western North Carolina. They're amazed that a lot of these officers left APD are taking pay cuts to go work Henderson County, Haywood County, Madison County, because they feel supported there. They feel like they can do their job and not be scrutinized on every move that they make. And I'm telling you, the people that left, that's what they're telling me. Well, District attorney and this environment in Asheville and Buncombe County don't feel safe working here.
Yeah, but that's a solvable issue if that's the main issue.
I don't know. We've tried to solve it for years. It's not been solved for years.
What it needs is that I know for myself and for people that I'm around, we are grateful for our law enforcement, both from the county and the city. We are grateful for what they do. And so we need to make sure that we partner and come out in numbers, and we need to let them know that they are valued, and that we need to change that narrative, because what has happened is we've allowed a small group of loud voices to then dictate the narrative about our county and our city. And the reality of it is, I think everybody would agree, if there's a bad officer, nobody wants that bad officer. Right. But we have great officers that do hard work. Their job is hard.
It was really hard.
Yeah.
And it's not just the officers too. Yeah. And in terms of, things have been done like having EMS workers who are reaching out to people with substance abuse issues. There are people who do the work with folks on the street to try and connect them to programs that can be helpful. There are plenty of things that a park ranger instead of a police officer, we want officers to be able to do their most important work of solving crime. And I think there are ways to create a community around public safety that could be very, very helpful, supportive of the police department, supportive of EMS workers, firemen, and all those people that interact with people on the street every day, and provide a network of support. But they have to be compensated at a level, because they're competing not just with other police officers or firemen, things of that nature. They're competing with business. And we've seen our members have to get competitive.
I want to go back to something that I found interesting. We started this discussion talking about accountability, and then we moved on talking about trust in the DA and the judges. All these people are elected. Does some of this, and I'm just throwing this out there, fall on the voters to bring some help to these issues?
If you look at the cities that we see on the news every night that's having problems, crime problems, it all can come back to a DA that are changed the rules, or letting people right back out, not putting them into programs, not charging them for certain crimes, and that's what's happening here. If you go into court, you arrest somebody, if they go in and say, I'm an alcoholic, case dismissed out the door, instead of saying, hey, let us help you get in a program. Let us do this for you. It's about, for lack of a better, catch and release. That's basically what's going on in Asheville now. And there's no way that can change unless you get a new DA or new elected officials. The police officers now have told them, hey, the communities love you. People out here, everyday people, businesses, they love you. But those that control your life, as far as benefits, as far as your cases, there is anti-police, as they said a while ago, anti-police thread narrative that's in
Well, they've been
County.
showing up at city council meetings for 2.5 years. And they have a very strong narrative, and nobody else was showing up. And so the police department had to stand by and hear meeting after meeting anti-police sentiment. And so when our group got together, it was really clear we had to do something really hard. We had to show up in person at city council meetings because that's the only way you're going to get the ear. And we started showing up at the public safety meetings, which the council has now combined the public safety committee with climate change committee, and we're not happy about that because
say that again.
They've combined the public safety committee with the climate change committee, so it dissolves the importance of public safety. You understand? So we're kind of up against it in terms of really making sure we spend a lot of time focusing on supporting the Asheville Police Department, and that goes for the Buncombe County Police as well. I want to be clear in that. Our group supports all law enforcement and first responders. That's why we formed, and we're getting loud and vocal about it.
Well, that's right. Every law enforcement and everyday people, when they hear what you just said, combining that with, they just laugh at it. But to those that are in charge that controls our dictates what happens, to them that seems a reasonable combination. But to everyday men and women, that's laughable to combine those two committees together.
Okay, let's move on to our next question, if that's all right. Many business owners obviously concerned about the lack of visibility of officers downtown. So is there a way to address those concerns even before we hire more officers? What can be done?
Oh, that's a good question. I would really like the answer to that. And I mean, they're still 40% down. This is well over 2 years we've gotten worse instead of better. And I do think it's a compensation issue. It's a morale issue, but I think you can deal with a lot of morale with improved salaries and benefits. So we'd like to see that happen. But I do think the morale issue is absolutely critical. It needs to be vocal from the top.
And what you're saying goes a long way to retention. Better salaries and stuff. Now, a lot of people may not come in here for the salary, but those that've been here 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and to keep them here. We lose them to the Highway Patrol, we lose them to SBI, we lose them all the time. And for a while in Asheville, it is come to Asheville, they got some of the best training, be here 2 years, 3 years, then leave here. Go somewhere else. And but that would really go to keep those officers that when they get to that 3 year point, go, man, I've got good benefits here.
Start from cadets only.
Right.
I know there's a big push, and I'm so thankful for that, but it's not enough.
It's not enough.
We've got to attract experience, and with experience comes a higher pay. I do want to say this, though. We have heard directly from the Asheville Police Department how much they appreciate the Asheville Coalition for Public Safety. And for the first time, they're really feeling community support, and I think it's really important to point that out. Right. And our group in less than a year has grown to over 160 people who are out there to support the Asheville Police Department. It's really important to point that out.
Well, I think that needs to be tenfold. I mean, there needs to be thousands of people in that group. To your question concerning what can be done for businesses, when you ride around our city and we're all here because we love this city, but when you look at certain things, and if I was starting a business, I would have real questions on whether or not I want to start a business here in Asheville. If you ride down Tunnel Road, if you go down Tunnel Road, and you can count the number of shopping carts that are just lined along the highway. in Swananoa River Road. I mean, just the other day, I counted 8 shopping carts in the river there. Now, that's costing a business. I have a retail business. I know what a used shopping cart costs. But when you're seeing Target and Best Buy shopping carts all along Tunnel Road, and you're seeing those things, and then I've been in Lowe's and they have people literally walk in, put stuff in a buggy, and just walk straight out, and they can't address those folk. They can't do anything about that. And law enforcement, there's just not enough. We don't have enough to be able to cover that. But then at the same time, when it comes to property crime, those things are not, even if you arrest someone, it's not going to the final end. It's getting dismissed. So there's a combination of things. If we're going to help businesses, we need a large segment of our population who believes in law enforcement, both in the city and the county, to come and to partner with those that are vocal and to stand with our businesses and to make sure that our law enforcement officers know that they're valued and that they're loved in our community. We need them.
And we've talked about police staffing problems. Now let's hear from the business community.
Yeah, we want to give you a reminder of some of the problems that they are experiencing downtown. Take a look. Downtown business owners noticing the current staffing shortages at APD.
And that helped provide a lot of police presence in downtown, just with officers on foot, on bicycle.
Raising concerns about the lack of visibility.
There isn't presence that keeps them from trespassing.
In recent months, 14 businesses robbed by 2 men. Many say the problem is only getting worse.
I mean, how many people have to be assaulted? I said that in 2020. I said someone's going to get hurt, and that's when you're going to do something. But you still haven't done anything.
Some residents taking their concerns to Fox News.
You can come to Asheville and you can do anything, and nothing's going to happen to you. The police can arrest you, but you'll be back out in the streets.
Now, many of them are wondering how the city will take action on this issue.
And we've heard a lot from downtown employees and business owners scared for their safety. In fact, we want to show you a moment captured on camera while our reporter Hannah McKenzie was reporting on this topic.
We've had people like that right there come to the door and they want in, and they have no business coming in here. We don't. That was perfect, actually. Thank you.
Does that happen often?
Yes, all the time. And they've actually been at the door, banging on the door and cussing us out.
That brings us to our next question. What needs to be done to make them feel secure at work, and especially on their way into work and leaving work?
One of the things that we're considering, we've got a feasibility study that will be done in April. And by we, I mean the Asheville Chamber of Commerce. We've hired in some consultants to look at establishing business improvement districts. And the thought is that you put additional people on the street that lend a sense of security, that are well trained on who to communicate with, whether it's the police department or it's mental health workers or it's someone else, but trying to provide more of a network and a presence so that people feel safer going to and from work. We've even talked about, I don't know if y'all did this back in when I was in college, you could get an escort if you had to go from one place to another on campus and you were by yourself. We've talked about that type of behavior. That doesn't rise to police level behavior. Instead, it's workers that we could hire who could help establish kind of that network of connection that I was talking about, that I think is incredibly important. We need people who know people on the street, can tell the difference between a person who has never been in the area before and maybe a drug dealer versus the person that we know has a mental health issue that needs care, and know what to do with those folks when they encounter them. But people who will get to know the business owners so they know who they can call to get assistance. But we need a downtown patrol regardless.
We do.
When you're 40% down in the number of police officers, that brings me back to getting that staffing number up, and I think that's related to dollars.
Yeah. Well, one of the things too, I had a conversation with an assistant city manager and an APD officer, and they were talking about if you're a downtown business and you have trespassing issues, there's this process in order for the police to be able to enforce your trespassing. Not only as a downtown business owner do you have to put up signs, but then you also have to have a letter on file with the city before they can actually enforce that. It made no sense to me. I said, so why not do this? Because instead of complicating that, every downtown business, why don't we opt everybody in? We opt everybody in, and if a business wants to opt out, that's different.
I think that's a great idea.
But why tie the hands of law enforcement? Why make them jump through all this red tape when you got someone that's defecating in a doorway or doing something they shouldn't be or somewhere that they shouldn't be, that law enforcement's hands are tied, what they can do because there's not a letter on file there. It just doesn't make sense to complicate stuff.
Because of the shortage, so many of these teams have been disbanded. When I was there, we had a bike team. It was me and 5 people during the day shift on bikes. We'd go visit the people at the store. We'd go to A-Hope, talk to people who had a day shift and night shift. And that's still in place, but they don't have the personnel to do that. They've had to disband the traffic unit. They've had to disband so many of these units that help and work in the community because they're so short. And so that's why.
Is there a way to collaborate between the sheriff's department and the police department?
Well, the sheriff department is short too. They're 40 down into their detention facility. They're short.
But they're not in as bad a situation as the police department is.
Well,
I would love to find ways for there to be priorities established for some of these areas where we have a concentration of businesses. Therefore, there's going to be a concentration of people. Therefore, there's going to be a concentration of whether they're travelers or they're people who are truly homeless or panhandlers or whatever they happen to be.
Well,
I feel like
businesses used to pay. Now you can check. Back when I was there, we worked what's called augment. On my day off, I could go work downtown on foot. And the businesses paid extra tax or something downtown
that's
for
what
that.
We're talking about with the business improvement district.
So these officers could work on their day off, come downtown and work, go to Pritchard Park and hang out and talk to all the visitors and be there and be seen. And once again, they're so short that they don't get enough people even to want to work that for extra money.
Well, I think it's important to point out some businesses can afford that and some cannot. And the mom and pop businesses might have a hard time, and they might feel like, hey, our taxes pay for a police department. We want the police department. It's great if a hotel industry can pay extra for private security, but I don't know if some of those little shops downtown can afford that.
I think they can't afford not to at this juncture.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, just to address something that you said, Kit, I know from my conversations with Sheriff Miller and his team and some other folk that they are devising a plan and how can they be more of a presence in the downtown area, and what are some of the things that they can do utilizing technology, doing some things there, because there has to be a collaboration.
I think
I know we've been used to having city, county, and we've kept those things there. But we're at a place right now that we got to figure out how we can collaborate with law enforcement. And I'm not saying that they're not doing it. I'm just saying that needs to be a part of the conversation.
A visible part of it.
Yes, and so and again, and I'm still at this place to where I just think that the voices of the many need to be heard. And I just believe that there are a lot of people that appreciate law enforcement, that are grateful for our law enforcement, and we can't allow those voices to stay silent and allow that minority group to continue to talk down and to harm this great city that we all love.
Thank you.
Let's talk more about the businesses downtown. Do you think that the rise in crime and the safety concerns are having an impact on tourism and people wanting to visit Asheville?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think this should be characterized as a tourism issue, because when you think about it, who spends the most time downtown? It's residents and workers. And that's who I worry about more than anybody else. Customers on the whole are impacted. If they feel unsafe, they're not going to go and do business in whatever type of business it might be. I think it's really important that we remember that downtown is the hub of a regional economy, and the county is part of that, so therefore the county, and I think there's a willingness there to be engaged, and I so appreciate that. We've got to be cognizant of where the income comes from in order to be able to provide the many services that we enjoy in both the city and the county. And taxes are a big piece of that. If we don't protect the entity that is generating those taxes, we're going to be in trouble in a much bigger way.
So you want to see people pay more for services?
No. I want us to I want there to be enough, I want us to preserve the engine that's producing those taxes, which is the business and the tax base itself. And if you're not protecting that and it degenerates, then we're going to have less money to do all the things we need to do as a community.
I do know a lot of locals, though, have expressed privately they don't go downtown as much anymore. They don't feel safe, or for whatever reason, they're not going downtown as much. And I want to say I grew up in Asheville. I've worked in 3 locations. My husband had a business on Ann Street for over 20 years. It's moved to Rad. So we've personally seen the changes in the downtown. And what's really happened is really gone exponential in the last, I'd say, 2.5 years. It's important to point that out. And so, yeah, we got to be a place where the locals want to come downtown and go out and use it.
Right. They can't, the businesses that are downtown cannot survive on visitors alone or on residents alone. There have to be both there. But they're all customers. So we need to be a place where customers feel safe and where workers feel safe. And that was the thing we were trying with the meeting that we held with it was a focus on the workers and what it was like for them to go to and from work and to be afraid about getting to their car. It's an unacceptable situation. Unacceptable. We've got to do something and do it quickly.
When it comes to business owners, do they require their employees to have a sort of buddy system? I know when I worked in retail, before college, we walked together from the parking garage to the place. Is there some sort of buddy system?
Yes, there have been plenty of tips. The police has been great about giving tips to people, but there comes a point when you shouldn't have to be worried about taking the trash out that you're going to be attacked. I mean, I've had individual business owners say this has worn on their sympathy and their compassion for people who are experiencing, whether it's mental health, substance abuse. If it's criminal behavior, it's criminal behavior.
Thank you.
And it needs to be pursued as criminal behavior and then needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. All of that, in my estimation, starts, though, with having enough people on the street, whether it's police officers, or it's a park ranger, or it's an EMS worker, or it's a street aide. I can't remember what the terminology is. But those people, we need to make sure we're fully funding those positions and getting them filled appropriately.
And we've talked about rising crime in Asheville and the factors behind it. Now it's time to hear from Asheville Chief of Police David Zack. I sat down with him for an exclusive one-on-one interview about these crime concerns. All right, Chief, thank you so much for sitting down with us. And you recently spoke about how law enforcement officers, you don't want to see them be the lead when it comes to handling mental and substance use cases and calls. What's being done to make that happen?
Well, part of our effort to reimagine policing here in the city has been a movement for more of a co-responder model. That there's a lot of models across the country that have adopted a similar strategy and have great success. So we're trying to bring that sort of response here. And I think we're going to be ready to roll something out probably within the next 6 months.
And how will that look?
Well, we're going to be working very closely with our fire department, who's really the lead on the co-responder model. And I think what we hope to have is, a presence of our fire department, the police more or less in a background in a safety type role, but then hopefully with, maybe some clinicians and or professionals who are experts in dealing with mental health crisis.
And I know that many business owners have been complaining about crime downtown and in the River Arts District. They don't want to vilify our homeless community, but they describe the people who are causing issues as vagrants. Who are these vagrants?
Well, I heard that for the first time a couple weeks back, and it kind of is similar to what our own thinking is that there are people who are homeless for a variety of reasons, and there are those who are seeking permanent housing and seeking permanent shelter, and then are those who just refuse and have no interest in that. So I think that's where they're trying to draw the line is, who wants assistance and who can we help versus those who want no assistance at all, but just want to live as they see fit throughout the city.
And are these vagrants the reason why crime is up downtown?
I don't think you can attribute all of that to the homeless population. I think certainly the lack of police presence downtown will contribute to a rise in crime. We know a lot of our aggravated assaults are what's driving the violent crime rate. So there's a variety of factors driving it. I don't think you can point at just one and just say the homeless are responsible for this. I don't think that's fair.
But you're seeing the biggest increase in people using meth and opioids. How is the police department handling that?
Well, right now with our staffing issues, it's extremely difficult to be proactive. And again, when you talk about addiction, when you talk about treatment, this is where we get in the discussion, is that really the role of the police? Our role is to interrupt the supply. It's the other experts who are experts in addiction, who are experts in prevention, who are experts in treatment. That's the co-responder model, and that's what we're looking to accomplish.
And when it comes to officers hiring, and I know the department has been dealing with an attrition problem even before you arrived, and then that exacerbated during the pandemic, when will the department see the results of this hiring firm? When will we see boots on the ground and more officers here in full staff?
Well, I think there's a misunderstanding of what the hiring firm does. They're not a hiring firm. They're a digital advertising firm. And this kind of narrative has been out there that somehow this group that we brought in is grabbing recruits by the collar and bringing them into the door. That's not what they do. They're a digital advertising firm. We're trying to make people aware of the opportunities in Asheville, and to do that, we have to go where they are, which is social media, and grab attention. Once we've grabbed your attention, once we've gotten you interested in the police department, well, now then we start doing, with our internal folks, started doing internal and follow-up and try to get you in the door. The purpose of the firm that we hired, Epic, is to make people aware that APD is hiring, we're looking for qualified people, and that APD is a great city Asheville's a great city to live in, and APD is a great person or great agency to work for. So that's their role, is just to get people's attention. It's our role then to get them in the door, and then it's the city's role to close the deal.
And where are we with that? Have you been seeing an increase in the number of applicants?
We know our web traffic is increasing regularly. We are now surveying our candidates and so forth to see, how did you become aware of the opportunities at APD? But again, we've only been operating for a couple of months, so it's very difficult to, quantify results right at this point. We need more time.
And this is your home, and you're recently, I guess, kind of a newlywed. Before this interview, I told you congratulations for that.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
But before you arrived, there were many changes in leadership and a growing attrition problem before COVID. So now, why are officers leaving the department? What are they telling you?
We've heard a variety of reasons. We've lost over 100 in the last 2 years. And, the reasons, many left the profession altogether. And we also have to remember, this isn't just an Asheville problem. This is a nationwide problem. The problem with recruitment has been going on, I'd say, since Ferguson, Missouri, that we started to see across the nation steady decline in police applicants, a waning interest in the profession. That is now, again, been exacerbated by 2020 and what took place in Minneapolis with the killing of George Floyd. So as police have been vilified, it has made the profession less attractive. So we've been seeing a steady decline in applicants for years. And now it's really reached crisis stage, not only for APD, but a lot of agencies across the country.
And when you describe police officers or the police profession being vilified, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I think we've all seen the negative reporting where, something can happen, 1,000 miles away in Minneapolis, and my officers are going to get a rock thrown at their head or a bottle thrown at their head in Asheville. So when we see these incidents take place, the entire profession takes a hit. It's not just that agency, or that's not just that individual officer. The entire profession suffers. And then, of course, when we've seen with certain media, not all, where then those situations, those isolated incidents get exploited, and it's painted the entire profession in an ugly manner. And we can all see it. And now you're just having, again, just a waning interest in the profession, but you're also having a lot of people who've been in the profession for decades decide, I've had enough. And even their families now are encouraging them to get out. So, we've got a situation here. Again, it's a local crisis, but it's a nationwide crisis, but it's much more of a crisis here than it is in many cities across the country.
What do you want to see from the city manager and city council? Your boss is city manager, her boss is the city council. What do you want to see to try to change and bring in more officers and also keep our streets safe?
Well, right now what we're seeing is a definite understanding that there's a problem. And, compensation has been a huge issue that gets discussed quite frequently. And the city is really taking that seriously and making tremendous strides. And, we know Western North Carolina, and particularly Asheville's got some of the highest cost of living in the state, if not the highest. But we're also talking, a year or two ago, we were talking about an entry-level salary of about $42,000, which means you can't afford to live in this community, maybe even this county. So if you want your officers to be very invested, you got to compensate them well, and hopefully they'll live in the city that they patrol. That's the ultimate goal. So the city realizes that that's a problem. The city realizes it's got an image problem, with the way law enforcement has been treated. So they're taking a much greater interest in the department and investment in the department. I mean, recently we've had several council persons now want to jump in the car with our officers and go on a ride along and meet them and talk to them and see the challenges that they face. And I can't tell you how uplifting that is for morale and just changing the narrative, like, hey, we appreciate your efforts, we support you, we want to see what you're doing every day, we want to understand it better, but we also want to compensate you better because we know that's important and we know that we need you. And I think we're starting to see that, and it's having a very, very positive effect.
Well, Chief, I really do appreciate it. I want you to stick around because I do want to direct the viewers to some other answers on WLOS.com, but I really do appreciate you. Thank you.
Sure thing.
We are heading to our final topic, the plan moving forward.
What are the long-term solutions for this issue, and how are they going to be carried out? We've got about 4 minutes left.
If we had that answer, we'd be writing books and be that. It's a good question, and
I think one of the things that we have to do is that there are some permissive things that are against the law that we're allowing to happen. And when I go around the country and I look at other communities who enforce certain things, it changes the mindset. So when property crime happens, that we're prosecuting property crime regardless of the amount. whether it's someone that breaks in a car and only steals $50, or if it's someone that breaks out a window at a business and steals $1,000. Property crime is property crime. And if you're the victim, you deserve that's going to be treated the right way.
So you want the DA and judges to be tougher on crime?
They need to deal with those things. If that becomes the sentiment, what ends up happening is that element then either decides they either decide that they're going to do right or they're going to leave. And then I think we're doing a disservice to our community if we're not going to enforce panhandling. And I've challenged both city and county officials into looking at making public camping illegal. And the reason that that's important, and when you go to other communities who have done this, because it forces people into shelter and into other spaces. But it's illegal to do public camping on city property and county property, but we're seeing camping everywhere. And I realize law enforcement we don't have enough people to enforce that, but we can't continue to allow it to happen and then put it on the business or the landowner for them to be responsible to clean it up.
And then you've got the public vilifying the police department every time they do set a boundary. Yeah. It's perfectly acceptable to expect natural egress in our downtown and to feel safe. Most people move to Asheville because it was a safe place.
I think it's human nature for people to complain and to be vocal when they have complaints. But when something happens, like a camp being cleared, it's important that be voiced, that approval for that be voiced to our elected officials as well, so that they're not just hearing. And I mean, I'm saying this to myself too, because I have a lot of complaints about what business needs in this community. And while everybody's compassionate, and we all want to be compassionate, it's a hugely philanthropic community. Yep. We also, on a parallel path, need to be pursuing safety and enforcement of the law.
And I wish we could go on about accountability and talk more about this. You guys have been excellent. That concludes our roundtable on crime. We'd like to thank everyone for participating.
Absolutely. And if you missed part of the roundtable, you can find the full version on our website, WLOS.com. Have a great night.